Thrilled to be joined now by a Kings legend in his own right, Mr. Doug Christie, this has come full circle for me because, as you know, I covered you when I was at KHTK, Sports 1140
Yeah,
KHTK, and here I am on the TV side, and you now work at Sports 1140 KHTK, and it's
yeah.
just, does this just mean I'm getting old? This is wild. It's got to feel wild for you.
Well, I just turned 50, so I think we're both getting old, man. It's all good, though. It's all good.
How much are you enjoying the experience right now during the pandemic? I know you guys are working from home. You're still saddled alongside Grant Napier, both on the TV side and
Yeah,
on the radio side, but you guys still have a sports show to do every single day, and there's not a lot of sports going
yeah.
on.
It's really, Sean, to be honest with you, it's a lot different than I would have thought. I thought I would think that like it would be difficult content, but to be honest with you, it really hasn't been. I mean, we've had sports legends on, we've had authors on like Harlan Coben, uh, and to be to be honest, it's been a little bit, Sean, refreshing to be frank with you, because many times, like when you tune into sports radio, what you'll hear is what happened last night, what's the next game going to be. But in many ways, it's been like an autobiography for a lot of these people who come on. We learn a lot about them. We learn where they come from, what got them into their chosen field, why they like it. We learn that some of these people, like Harlan Coben, who sold some of the most books in the history of the world, that he was like, yeah, I'm a fan of yours. And I'm thinking, what? So it's been really cool, man, to kind of listen and go about it the way that we have.
Yeah, it's been funny for me too because for me having to put sports content on TV every single day, I get asked the same question: What the hell are you guys going to talk about? And there's still sports going on. There's sports never stops, whether there's events or not. It
Yeah.
seems like the news cycle doesn't ever stop.
No, it doesn't. You can. The one thing about sports stories is they have legs, meaning that we can talk about the Lakers series, we can talk about other sports series like we're seeing with The Last Dance and things like that, and it touches people in a lot of different ways. For some people, they have never seen Michael Jordan, so they enjoy that. For some people, they lived through our Kings days and they like that and they want to hear about it. So it's been really refreshing and really good to look at sports and kind of come about it in a different way and still be able to deliver some incredible fans of 1140 KHDK content.
How much do you enjoy just being able to talk to people every day? And I imagine not a day goes by where people aren't reminding you of the things you did in a Sacramento Kings uniform. And to be able to talk to that audience every day has got to be pretty fun.
Someone just asked me, I can't remember who it was, but they were saying Ken Rudolph, who
Yeah.
he was asking me, I did a podcast with Ken. He said, does it get boring? Does it get old? And I said, no, because when I'm talking to first of all, the relationship between the Sacramento Kings fans and especially that team is a really interesting one because it's real. And I think that they reciprocated a lot of the passion that we put out on the floor, and there's respect from both sides. So when I talk to the fans, it doesn't get old because they'll bring up something and we'll have a conversation and it'll be a nuance. It'll be something that I didn't think about. The big thing is the thing, if it's the fight or if it's the game 7 or if but inside of that, there are many different stories. And the Kings fans, they also saw it from a different perspective and they felt it from a different perspective. And I respect that because their passion leaked onto the floor and leaked into us.
I'm glad you mentioned The Last Dance. I'm certainly going to ask you about that here coming up in a minute. But the main reason I wanted to have you on, for people who don't know right off the bat, is we lost a dear friend of ours just yesterday,
Yeah.
Marty McNeal, who, it's funny because, you're a basketball player. You've been a young player in the league and a veteran, and you've had people show you the ropes. He was somebody that did that for me on the media standpoint when I was working at 1140 on the radio side, even though he was in the print journalism side of things. First showing up at a Kings game, I'll never forget. He was one of the first people that sought me out and made sure I felt comfortable and felt along the way. And it's so funny. It doesn't matter what business or industry you're in. That type of mentorship and people just being overall good people to show someone the ropes that may not feel comfortable. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It seems like that if you're a good person, you just tend to do that.
Man, Sean, is it sad that we lost Marty? And even before I go to Marty, rest in peace to Jerry Sloan. We lost Jerry Sloan this afternoon as well, a great coach of the Utah Jazz, one of the best to ever do it. But speaking to Marty is every time I hear his name, I start laughing or I smile. There hasn't, even when I heard that he passed away, I had talked to him. I called him from time to time. We chatted, tried to get him out to lunch in Sacramento. He never did it. He had to go all the way to Dallas, Texas, and then he came to a game. Got to give him a hug just this last year, so I got to see him and talk to him for a little while. So, but every time, whether it's the MFs or the Bees, and I mean, when I think of Marty, I think of somebody who always stood their ground. I always thought that he was firm but fair. I wasn't a big reader of the sports then, but if I was on the training table, it was there, and it was Marty's column, or what he was writing, I'd pick it up and read it. And I always thought, really fair with what he had to say. Look, I'm not trying to screw up, but if I did, he called it. And I was 3 for 11. What do you want me to do? I'm 3 for freaking 11. And I'd always have my headphones on when I was in there, and I'd be, Pete Youngman, our trainer, would be working on me, or I'd be coming out of there and sitting down. I'd be reading my book, and a lot of people didn't bother me, but Marty would always come over and say, "Yo, dog, what's up? What's up? What you listening to?" He always wanted to know what I was listening to. And like, weirdly enough, it would like, he wants to know my motivation. So when he sees me going crazy on the floor, he's like, "Oh, he was listening to Tupac today. Okay, I see where he's going." He's one of my favorites, man. I think a really good person, a great spirit. I think it goes without saying when you look at all the outpouring of love on social media, that shows that Marty was not only loved, but he was respected for the way he went about his business. A true New Yorker. He talked to Ish with the best of them. And that's really what I said more than anything, Sean, was I appreciate our conversations, because we had many conversations about whatever. And he would always, he would take his stance, and we might not see the same way, but that was okay. And we would chop it up, go our separate ways. And when I seen him the next time, it was the same Marty. And I always appreciated that. So the Marty Mac, I say, rest in peace, my friend.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. You look at a lot of today's players who I go, man, if you only experienced Marty McNeal.
Good luck. Good freaking luck. I don't know. I was one that I didn't mind that, because if you were right, you were right. Like, being criticized isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's self-evaluation. You know what I'm saying? And that's a good thing. But he was he was one of a kind, Sean. I tell you, man, I'll miss him dearly. I'm so glad that I tracked him down when he was in Sacramento, and we talked on the phone for, I don't know, it must have been about 30 minutes. I was driving, and we were just chopping it up, and I said, "Man, come out to lunch." And I'm like, okay. But then he came to a Dallas game this past year, so I looked up there before the game. We were doing our hits and stuff, and I said, "I'll be damn, that's Marty Mac." So I went up, started talking to him. Grant came over and said hello. It was just really good to see him, man. So he left us with a lot of really good stuff. To somebody like you who's been mentored by a guy like Marty, you can only be better for that, Sean.
One of the things I used to love was the way the locker room was in the old Arco building, and there would be by Webb's locker, which was the closest one to that the players'
Door.
exit. But you also had a bar of food, and there was a refrigerator there, and it was meant for players and staff. But Marty will come in and he'll just take. He'll take. That's his too. I actually, to be honest, the way the Kings locker room is set up today at Golden One Center. This past year, it came up where there's a center table and there's some gum or some whatever, and I'd frequently come in and rummage through it. And two of the locker room attendants were there when Marty was there, and they're looking at me going, "What the hell are you doing?" They're like, "You can get away with that. You were in the old building. You know how Marty was. The other new people, they can't get away with that."
Yes, you got to pay your dues, man. Marty was. Marty was respected, man, and it just says from watching him call Pete MFers and just we would call them arguments, but they really weren't arguments. It was his personality, and we all appreciated it. Would it get a little chafe sometimes? Yes, it would, but it wouldn't be like that. Wouldn't be right because that's who he was, and he always stayed true to his personality, and I loved him for that.
Yeah, and certainly, the cursing, it was a term of endearment. It was always in the most beautiful way. I know I'm putting you on the spot. Two things. Did you know of Marty before coming to Sacramento? I know, you had a few stops in the NBA before Sacramento, but he's just one of those people that, I'll never forget being in Tahoe. And I know he didn't cover Jordan like that, but because he was in the NBA so long, Jordan knew him and ushered him in. I remember seeing that. It was written in the Bee the other day, and I remember witnessing that moment.
I saw him. I saw him in scrums. We're asking questions and different things, but we never engaged like I did when I got to Sacramento. Immediately, as soon as I got here, he was one of the first ones to start, throwing some questions around. I can't remember if he was the guy to ask me about starting because Nick Anderson was a starter when I got here, and one of the people in the audience, and I want to say it was Mac. I can't remember. It was like, "Hey, are you going to be a starter?" And I was thinking to myself, okay, you guys be throwing balls out here. This is the first day. And I was like, I've always been a starter, so I plan on it. And it was kind of like, oh, okay. But yeah, I knew of him, but not until I got here did I get to know him.
Yeah, that's a question that's always boggled my mind. It's like, yeah, if it's up to me, of course I'm going to start, but I'm not the coach, right? Like, what are you supposed to say?
Absolutely.
I think I'm the seventh man off the bench.
Not even a chance, man.
Right.
I mean, we all have egos, and I think I'm good. We'll see.
Yeah. As we wrap up here on Marty real quick, is there a moment, singular moment, can you think of just, you've touched on a few things and just how you remembered him. Is there something that just stands out that you can remember most about your time here in Sacramento and having to deal with him the most?
It was always the pleasantries because for me, Marty would come in and some guys would go out and shoot. I would get worked on, and then I'd come into the locker room. And there was just this time there where it was just about time for all the press to leave, but Marty could hang out a little bit if he wanted to. And it would be a time for me and him to jive a little bit. I'd take off my headphone, put it to the side, and he would always ask me two questions. One was a question, one was a comment. One was, "What the hell you listening to, dog?" And the other one would be, and I can't say the whole thing, but "You still reading that MFing book?" Because I always read this book before. It was Deepak Chopra, The Way of the Wizard, had these lessons in it. And every day I'd read a new lesson. Even after I read through it, I'd do it again and do it again. And he was like, "You still ain't got through that damn book, huh? You dumb as hell, man." So when I think of Marty, it's about music and it's about my book, man.
That's tremendous. That's tremendous. As you now have shifted from a player now to the what I like to call quasi-media side of things, do you look at it as at the media any different these days? You're looking at, when you were here in Sacramento, the media looked a lot different. A lot of TV stations, you were at the height of popularity in terms of NBA national appeal. Things are a little bit different now. Kings are kind of on the come up again, but the media looks different. Do you notice that much as a former player now turned into the media?
Yeah, the media, but before it was people who went to school and for it and got degrees and, maybe they came up and paid their dues. The media now is different, if you start a podcast, if you do, blogs and different things, you can get your media credential and more people have a voice and it puts more people in there. I think that there's a learning curve for the media as well, because like when I started doing this, there are many things that Grant explained to me that I just had absolutely no idea. Like when a game winner is hit at home versus when a game winner is hit on the road. When it's hit on the road, we can go crazy because the gym is silent as hell because everybody's mad. When it's at home, there's a moment where you gotta let the air breathe and let the fans do what they do. They want to be heard right now. And then you can come in and do your thing. That is something that's taught. But if you just start in a blog or all those different things, I'm not going to go as far as say, oh, those people are media. They are media because it's a different time now. But there's a learning curve that you have to go through about decorum and all the different things that go with it. So is media a little different now? Yes. Do players check their phones at halftime and different stuff? Yes, it is. It's truly different. That doesn't mean it's any worse or any better. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it's different. And as it's different, we have to change with that.
Yeah, well, that's well said. I know before we get you out of here, Last Dance is something, ironically, the whole world was looking at over the past 5 weeks,
Right.
6 weeks. Now it's coming to ABC on reruns, so there's going to be even some people who didn't have cable to be able to watch it. But what stood out to you about seeing that as someone who, played, competed against Michael at the peak of his career? Positives and negatives, I imagine, associated with that as a competitor, but just what stands out from your looking at The Last Dance, and is there a memory in your mind with Michael Jordan that stands out?
As I look at it, a lot of that stuff, Sean, either I was playing, so I was involved, you meaning in the league, or I watched it happen, meaning like when Mike comes to the top of the key versus the Detroit Pistons, and they had just been Brendan Surr in the huddle with the Detroit Pistons and saying, don't let him go right, don't let him go right. And he gets the ball against the greatest defender or one of them in Dennis Rodman, and he goes right still. And he shoots the ball off the glass over him and Isaiah, game over. It's just, I personally enjoyed watching Michael speak because we had never really heard him speak about things like this. And I know there's a lot of criticism and different things, but as we went along, and right from the very beginning, I said to Grant one day, I said, this was before actually Michael had said it on a later episode. I said, Grant, there's a price for greatness. Kobe sacrificed his whole childhood. Michael Jordan has been, held up in quarantine his whole life pretty much because he couldn't go anywhere. He couldn't do anything. And those prices they are heavy. You have to sacrifice pieces of your life. So when people criticize, like, he's this type of leader, he's that type of leader, did he get the job done? Yeah, he got the job done. In my estimation, Michael Jordan is the greatest player that's ever played the game of basketball. That I think can be argued from many different things. If you look at statistics and a lot of different stuff, I just think it was the first time that anyone had put together the whole thing: mind, body, and basketball. He was strong of the mind, thankful to the Detroit Pistons. The body, thankful to the Detroit Pistons. He started lifting weights when lifting weights wasn't in vogue. It would mess up your jump shot, quote unquote. Well, he showed that wasn't it. And in the basketball aspect, he mastered it to a level that, I mean, he broke the game down into 8-8-8-8, and that was his 32 points. And that's how he said he was going to average it. It was just like, damn, that kind of sounds crazy, but no, everybody couldn't do it. There were so many different pieces in there, man, as I looked at it, that I just truly enjoyed. But the biggest piece for me personally was watching him respond and react, like to Gary Payton when he started laughing, and those type of things. Those are the priceless parts, because I saw the man play. I played against him and felt the power and saw all the different things. I thought that a telling piece was, and I had, because, we talk sports so much, that some of these things I said to Grant, and it's really just crazy to hear it said by Mike or by Kobe, but Kobe's comment about there would be no me without Mike, I think is one of the most telling things that I've ever explained. Made me a little bit mad because I got bumped in the head many times by Kobe from Mike passing all that information on. But I thought it was fantastic. I know a lot of different people have different opinions on it, but if you don't think he's the greatest player, he's certainly one of the greatest, no doubt about it.
Yeah, no doubt. And when, I mean, as a competitor going up against him, when was it that you realized that, man, he's the guy?
When I was with the Raptors, we beat them in the 72-10 year. We were one of those 10 losses, the lowly Raptors, and we beat them in Sky Dome, and it was an incredible game. He had like 30 points or something, and it was coming down towards the end. But during the whole game, I was guarding him most of the time, and it was physical. Bang, he was hitting. He never took it personally. He never cried to the referees. It was almost like, okay, that's the game we're playing. Let's go. And I always thought that I respected that the most out of any superstar that I played against. He was like, look, we're just going to handle the business. It came down to one of the last plays, and I had been sticking him. We had Alvin Robertson, who's a really good friend of Michael's, on our team at the time. And the coach, when they called the timeout at the end, said, hey, Alvin, you're going to stick Michael on this one. And Alvin kind of went, the young fella's been doing a good job against him. Let him go. And for me, it was a validating point, because I was never really like a quote unquote defensive player. I learned when I was with the Knicks, and that ended up being one of my strengths in the league. But that particular moment, and we ended up winning the game, was fabulous. Then my daughter wanted an autograph. She was 3, so I had to go into the locker room after that. I was scared to death. I'm thinking, oh my God, child, do you know, first of all, I don't really do this, but we were just beating the hell out of each other, and they lost. But he was so gracious, man, said, come here, man, come on over, sat down with him, chopped it up for a second. He signed the autograph. We still have it someplace here. And for that, I was always appreciative of not only Mike, but his superstardom. That he was the ultimate competitor. And for me, there is greatness in there that not everybody obtains.
I was able to witness him in person as a member of the Bulls. Didn't get to cover him as a member of the Bulls, but I did get to cover him when he came through with the Wizards, which I know it's not the same, but I will say for people who have those memories, I don't know if you even know this, you had a 5-9 record against Michael Jordan. Yeah. I remember when he came through Sacramento before the Wizards, he'd only lost in Sacramento one time in all that time that he had come through. So to say that you had a 5-9 record against him in your head-to-head matchups, but you held him to 22.4 points on an average across those games, that's got to feel pretty good considering what he's going for 30, 40 points on some games.
Yeah, it was, length, athleticism, and it wasn't only me, because many times the double team was coming and I was praying for the double team to come. But just, that he was the ultimate competitor and test for your competitiveness, excuse me. And for me, I just I tried as hard as I could, never said a word, never said anything, just competed my butt off. And a lot of lessons. So when I watch this, all that stuff comes back, and I'm so grateful somebody had a 5K camera, because if it would have been in SD, we'd be pissed off right now.
That's awesome. Doug, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I hope next time we do this, it's in person. Hopefully we're seeing you soon, and hopefully get back to some semblance of normalcy here, right?
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you, Sean. Go Kings.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, Doug. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
All right, man.